We live in an age where healing has like a highlight reel, where authentic has filters and vulnerability has these hashtags. And transformation is just another piece of content. I think we've learned how to look whole, but looking whole and being whole are not really the same thing. See, wholeness was never meant to be performed. It's not a posture that you hold. Being whole is a truth that you live. And the moment that you try to prove it, that's the moment you lose it. At Uber Vintagers, we don't perform healing. We want to embody it. See, integrity is what makes it real, and intimacy is what makes it felt. So we're not here to impress the world with our growth. We're here to live aligned with what's true for us. There's a strange pressure that comes when you start healing. That's that people, they begin to expect something from you. They want your enlightenment to make sense to them, right? They want your progress to be linear. They want your peace to be permanent. They want your forgiveness to be tidy. And so we start performing the version of ourselves that makes them comfortable. And we start smiling, even while we might be grieving. We speak calmly when really we're angry, right? And we downplay our needs so that we don't look like we're regressing. And then we turn our growth into this costume, and then we call that self-control. But integrity is not about control. Integrity is about congruence. And intimacy, it doesn't need to be curated. It just needs to be lived. Wholeness is not the absence of a fracture. Wholeness is the integration of everything that's real. That's your pain and your peace, your contradictions, your confusion. Like all of this belongs. It has a space. The performance of wholeness, on the other hand, is really about appearing like you're all finished and done. It's this illusion of completeness that tries to protect you from judgment. But the cost of that illusion is really your authenticity. You can't fake alignment because it'll leak out. You can't perform honesty because it'll develop cracks. You can't rehearse belonging because it never really lands in. When we perform wholeness, we're not trying to deceive others. We're just trying to feel safe, aren't we? See, we learned that being too messy made others withdraw, and that emotions made them uncomfortable, and that uncertainty just got labeled as unstable. So we cleaned ourselves up to keep their love. But anything that really requires you to hide, to be loved, will cost you your peace. And that's why integrity is such a radical practice. Integrity is what demands honesty, even when it costs you your approval. And intimacy, like real intimacy, it only grows in the soil of what's true and real. So let's define this clearly. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is integration. Wholeness is what happens when the parts of you that were once exiled now become home. When you stop managing perceptions and start instead inhabiting your peace. Wholeness is when you can hold all those contradictions of yours without collapsing under them. When you can say, I'm okay, and I'm still learning in the same breath. When you can tell the truth about your pain without losing sight of your worth. See, you don't owe anyone a clean version of your becoming. You don't owe that to your family. You don't owe that to your followers. You don't owe that to your partner, not even to your past self. You don't have to turn your wounds into a brand. You don't have to make your boundaries poetic. You don't even have to narrate your breakdown like a version of a TED Talk. Sometimes healing looks like silence, and that's okay. Integrity says, I refuse to lie to myself just to get the likes. And intimacy says, I refuse to hide from myself just for the sake of comfort. And together these two, they create this wholeness that isn't performative, but more so it's embodied. See, some of us, we perform wholeness because we fear judgment of others. Others perform it because we fear being forgotten. But either way, it's the fear of running away, right? Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being too much, the fear of still being broken when everyone else just seems like they're figured out and fixed. But what if the goal was never to be fixed? What if the goal was actually to live freely? Freedom and perfection don't coexist. See, one requires performance, whereas the other one requires your presence. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting to grow. But growth becomes toxic when it becomes like this theater, when you use it to hide rather than to reveal. When we show the highlight reel of our breakthroughs, and then we edit out the breakdowns that got us there, that's not honesty. Because pretending to be healed is just another way of staying sick. And wholeness doesn't need witnesses, it just needs honesty. Wholeness is not measured by how calm you appear under pressure. Wholeness is measured by how honest you can be in the midst of pressure. So true wholeness is not interested in the optics. It's actually interested in integrity. And it doesn't say, look at how peaceful I am. No, it says, I'm still learning to breathe in the midst of this. It doesn't say, I've overcome. It says, I'm still here. And that's enough. There's a reason that intimacy feels so threatening in a culture that's built and relies on performance. Because real closeness requires that we drop the mask. It demands the death of pretense. And for people who are taught to survive through presentation, that can feel so much like annihilation. But you cannot be both fully known and constantly performing. See, you have to choose. And when you choose to be real, you lose control of perception. But in the midst of that, you gain connection. And connection is what I think we're all really craving all along. And the beautiful irony of wholeness is that it's not something that you arrive at as much as it's something that you return to. See, you started whole, and then life along the way fractured your awareness of that truth. And healing is just what helps us remember what it was. So stop chasing this polished version of yourself. Stop waiting until your chaos looks more aesthetic. Stop branding your breakthroughs and instead start living in them. Wholeness does not need an audience. Your wholeness needs permission. And that permission only has to come from you. So maybe the bravest thing that you can do today is to admit that you're not fine and still love yourself right in the midst of that moment. Maybe the most integrated thing that you can do is to show up in pieces and call that sacred. Maybe the most intimate thing that you can offer the world is your unperformed presence. Because authenticity doesn't always look pretty, but it always feels peaceful. See, the performance of wholeness will always exhaust you. It'll make you question why your peace feels like work. And it'll make you doubt why vulnerability feels a lot riskier. That's because performing requires control, whereas wholeness thrives on surrender. You can't perform surrender. You can only experience and live in it. So here's the question I want you to hold on to today, and that is, when did your peace become something that you had to prove? Because if peace depends on perception, it's not peace. That's just public relations. And most of us have been managing our image for so long that I think we forgot how to rest. And that's why the deepest integrity practice isn't productivity, it's honesty. It's sitting still long enough to stop auditioning for calm and to instead start embodying our truths. Wholeness doesn't mean that everything fits neatly. It just means that you're stopping forcing what doesn't fit anymore. And it's not a finish line, it's just an unfolding. It's this daily decision to stop pretending and to start participating instead. And the more that you participate in what's real, the less energy you have for what's fake. And that's the paradox of peace. See, it gets quieter, the more it gets truer. In tomorrow's episode, we're going to be exploring what belonging without earning looks like. We'll explore how true belonging begins when you stop negotiating for acceptance, and then you start instead remembering that we were never meant to audition for love in the first place. So we'll talk about what it means to live connected, not from approval, but from authenticity. But for now, let me remind you this. You were never meant to impress anyone with your healing. You were meant to live free in your humanity, to laugh when you're joyful, to cry when you're grieving, to be messy when life demands it, to be silent when you need to. And that's what I think real wholeness looks like. It has this capacity to breathe. So if you've been performing through your way of peace, this is your permission to stop and to take off that costume and lay down the lines that you've been rehearsing. And instead to remember that the performance might get applause, but presence is what gets belonging. Because our integrity is not loud, our integrity is aligned. And our intimacy isn't about looking like we're healed, it's about being seen in the midst of our healing. And that is, I think, what makes us whole. Thanks for listening in, my dear listener. I'll see you in tomorrow's episode.